Welcome to the Adapt Podcast, a podcast for executive leaders looking to be successful in the digital age. Get practical tips from successful leaders and listen as digital movers and shakers talk about how they transformed companies into the digital era. Here is your host, Luis Gonzalez.
Welcome to another episode of the Adapt Podcast. Today is the number 8. And with us, we have Miguel Moreira. Miguel is a good friend of mine. It's a really interesting person that I had the pleasure to meet when I came back to Portugal a couple of years ago. And I'm really, really excited to bring him to the show because he has huge amount of experience. And I want you guys to access to all his knowledge and all his experience. So, Miguel, thank you so much for being here and welcome. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much, Miguel.
My pleasure.
Miguel, I wanted to start a little bit about yourself. So to start this show, knowing a little bit about you. Of course, I know you, but our audience does not know. So I would ask you to show us or guide us a little bit through your career and your background so that people know who is Miguel and who is the guy that we have in the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to have this discussion with you. To start with, when you say it's got a long experience, meaning this is an old man. Yes, I am an old man. I've been around for a while. Well, what can I say about that? It's just life. The good thing is that I'm still excited about career and technology. Technology is my passion. I always was connected with technology. I'm one of the ones that my, professional future was decided. There's a lot of people like me. It was decided in July 1969 when there was a man on the moon. And I saw that. I was awakened, and a lot of people that moved their lives. It changed my life. I knew exactly what I wanted to do from then on was technology. And I kept it, So that brought me into engineering, brought me into automotive, which I worked for General Motors. Then introducing a management layer on top of that, I went to consulting. I worked for Arthur Andersen and then for PwC on basically supply chain, manufacturing, consultancy processes and technology, then already management systems. And then I went to telecoms, in which I was almost 15 years, having a long career. It's very exciting sector, I would say, industry, because not only are large and transformative companies, but it's because of the product. The product is really, really change our lives. Broadband, internet, mobile, everything that we use comes from telecom. So it's really interesting that you are doing technology in a technology business, which is telecom. So it's really exciting. So I was there 15 years. I was managing IT, big organization, complex architectures, very, very demanding processes, but still very interesting. I left about 5 years ago, and then I start a different phase of my career as an entrepreneur, a little bit as an independent consultant. So I'm having more control about what I do right now, where I spend my time, but still, and again, always on technology. So it's been a journey, very interesting, and I still look at the future with enthusiasm and hope. So
it's impossible to get away from technology nowadays. I think it's such a pillar of our society in some way or another. I think most of us are working with some kind of technology. Miguel, I always like to start this show asking you or asking our guests, what is digital transformation for you? Because everyone talks about digital transformation, but there are thousands of different definitions. And your opinion, especially your opinion, really interests me because, as you said, you worked in telecom for so many years, and I think telecoms was one of the industries that suffered maybe a little bit with this whole transformation, right? So if you think about WhatsApp, if you think about Facebook calls or Instagram, right, really they destroyed what was the core business of telecommunications some years ago. So I really really want to hear your opinion, because in this case it was not just about technology, it was the entire business model that was completely disrupted. So what is digital transformation for you, and what does it represent?
Thank you, Luis. That's the key element. I would say it's probably one of the mostly misused terms, because it's become a generic thing for everything and nothing. And like always, everybody talks about it. It's in everybody's mouth, but it's. I think you have to understand what it means. First of all, I would separate the potential of disruption that digital brings, and I think it's something that it's really high in there, and that's very related with the one phenomena that we humans are very poor in managing, which is the exponential speed of the development of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that the potential of the digital transformation, I would call it digital disruption, comes from how fast as it evolved in the last 100 years. And obviously, our bio brains cannot really compute an exponential growth of any kind. I mean, every time you do the math, there's so many very cool examples from the king that was trading rice and grains of rice and was doubling and so forth. From the if you add up sheets of paper in a stack, if you fold 42 times, it takes you to the moon. Nobody believes, because our brains are not prepared to handle digital exponential growth phenomena. And that's what happened with digital. And that's related with the potential, which is a disruption. Then transformation is different. Is what do we do with that? How much of that disruption do we transform into actually new processes, new services, new products for people to use and for the economy to use? Obviously, there's a big gap between transformation and disruption. And I think that gap, it creates a lot of anxiety to people, because you always feel that you're falling behind if you are an organization. I could do more with that. And I think we have to kind of face that there's only some will be able to do some of that potential. There will always be a gap, which is a natural gap. But there's probably also a challenge that we should be able to do more. And I think that should be in our horizons, always to try to do more. Obviously, probably the answer is, why is it so hard? And I think it's mainly because transformation, you have to change legacy processes. You have to change people's minds, conventions, policies, and that's very hard to do, because we don't like to change. It's
Humans
been
don't like to
written
change.
millions of books about it. I mean, we're very resistant to change. So that's the reason for the gap. But I would say um, the potential comes from the exponential speed that technology has evolved. Transformation is how much you can do with that. There's a big gap. The gap should be smaller in the future, but that creates a lot of anxiety.
Wow, yeah, I love that you separate in both in two parts, let's say. And I was talking about the access of the speed of technology, and that last week I was picking up some boxes here in my house, and I opened one of the boxes, and I had a Spectrum, a old computer. So the younger generation most probably does not know what a Spectrum is, but it's what was my first computer almost 30 years ago. And if you think about the power of processing, the processing power that we had in that computer and what we have in iPhone, right? So you have an iPhone, Android, whatever phone, you have so much power of processing nowadays, and the speed of technology is coming faster and faster and faster, that it is being disrupted. That is very hard to actually keep up to the speed. and what is coming is incredible.
Yeah, but
The
the
potential.
challenge is exactly that. How much advantages do you take personally or economically from that increase of processing speed, right? How much do you take out of that potential?
Yeah, that's true, because at some point it's just more speed, but doesn't really impact so much the business model or the outcomes that you will produce with your own company if you only think about technology, right? So yeah, I fully understand. Really cool. Okay, Miguel. So the next question that I have for you is, what are the benefits that you see for established companies, not the normal startups? It's very easy to change because they are so small, they can shift direction in a very easy way. But what are the advantages that the most, or the companies that are established longer in the market can take out of the digital era, digital transformation? What kind of advantage do you think that they could take out of it?
Um, that's a very important question, Luis. Let me tell you, my approach to it is probably not so conventional, and it's not so conventional. It surprises me that there's not people that uh, relate technology and the potential of digital with something that is hard facts. I mean, we tend to relate with the soft improvements, but not so much as with hard improvements. I think there is a strong link about digital transformation and the potential of technology with productivity. And we have been quite poor in correlating the two things. I think productivity is the key. I mean, once we'll be able to transform digital and technology to a higher productivity levels at a process level and at economical level, I think that's the key to actually get people engaged, get companies engaged, and to actually quantify exactly the potential impact. And this is puzzling because if you look at productivity evolution charts from, let's say, mid of the 20th century after the World War and let's say the first industrial revolution, it's amazing that you see the improvement there in terms of productivity growth. But then when you hit you probably get into the second industrial revolution, let's say not the second part of the, let's say the digital revolution, let's say the machine age, the 1995, just before the internet, you can see that the productivity levels, the growth, but basically gets into a plateau. And that's a puzzling phenomena. You know, why have we been seeing the economy growing so much, but the productivity not growing so much? And actually, it's a puzzling. Economists have been, spending a lot of time around this. Unfortunately, they have not been gaining the traction and to transform that discussion into companies. You know, why, if we get so much technology, why is not the productivity growing equivalent to that, let alone the exponential growth that technology brings us? And I think that's very well related with return on investment, and it's very related with the hard economical impact of technology. And I think that's the biggest puzzle. When we try to get a company to use more technology and to make such an investment, it's when we have hard time doing that, it's because we cannot transform that technology into a productivity gain. Obviously, there are reasons for that, you know, of different kind. Um, Economists, they call it the productivity paradox. You know, maybe we're not measuring productivity well. Maybe it takes time. Uh, in the first industrial revolution in the beginning of the 20th century, when we changed from steam machines to electrical machines on factories, it took about 30 years to actually you gain the productivity improvements, because you have to change process, you have to change equipment, and sometimes you have to change people. Sometimes you have to change generations to take advantage of that. It's really hard. So what I'm focusing is on a measurement scale, which is productivity. And the interesting pieces is the why. You know, why can't we extract more productivity from technology? And I think it's very focused on uh, keeping the old processes and basically people do not recognize in general that they are part of the problem. And unless we have the talent and the capability to show them what they have to gain by doing the process differently, there will be an obstacle to change the process. That's why we are so resistant. So I think sometimes maybe the solution may not be so complex as that, because if we have the talent to show people that they have something to gain by changing the process, that will release that change easier. So
Yeah, I usually
coming to your point is the inability for companies to transform the potential of technology on productivity gains.
okay. Yeah, I loved a couple of things that you said that. So you compare the steam age with the industrial machinery age, and a couple of months ago, I took a mini course in MIT, and the person that was giving the course, he said something very very interesting. He said, if you think about, everyone now is trying to go into the digital era and trying to change entire companies, but this is not so simple as you mentioned. And he gave the example of exactly what you said: the time of the steam engines, and then the move to the electrical
He
engine.
probably wrote the book that I read,
It was the digital transformation playbook that was
Yeah.
from Rogers. And so, if let me share it with the audience. So what he said was that it was not enough to change simply the process. Even the display of the machinery in the entire factory was different, because when the engines were moved with steam and water, they needed to be positioned close to the water. But now, when they moved into electrical scenario, they don't need to. And they even had, at that time, companies even had consultants teaching factories how to design factories in a completely different way, and how they would be able to increase the productivity with new type of engines. And that's very very interesting, because I always use that kind of example to really show the parallel idea to what we are living, because I still believe that most of companies and people do not realize how big the change is towards what we had 20 years ago. My personal opinion is, and this is my personal opinion, in 100 years' time, people will look back, and I believe that COVID-19 will be the mark that actually triggers truly the digital age, I believe, and it's my personal opinion, because so many things change during these times of pandemia. So I really believe that will change. But again, it was we need something. We need the urgency. Human being needs the urgency in order to change. As you said, people don't like to change. So I
Yeah, and Luis, let me pick up on that point, and I think my interpretation of that is because people correlate change with losing their jobs,
yes,
and jobs are the main element of people's lives, because it's what provides them income, it's what provides them respect by their peers, by their family, and it's what provides them the respect of the society as being a productive element and a taxpayer. And
yeah. You are
when
touching you
people
are touching on a Maslow pyramid, right? The needs. So
Totally. When people think that by changing they can lose their jobs, they get on the defensive. So when they get on the defensive, we are basically stuck, because the technology will fail, most likely, will be very difficult. Obviously, that's a hard thing to do, but the talent will be that there's maybe you will lose something, you will gain something. I think that's a key element for an organization to get people out of the defensive mode and to the I have something to gain with that. On the process perspective, we have this tendency to add layers of complexity. So if I need to change something, I don't change what I do before, but I'm just going to do something more.
yeah,
Versus,
I had a joke with one of my customers in Germany that I well, when I was there, I was always making fun. in a nice way, of course, not in a negative way, depreciative way. But I was always teasing my colleagues, my German colleagues, that they said, if something goes wrong, you don't do a root cause analysis to see what went wrong. You just put another process on top of it to make
There you
sure
go.
that
Yeah.
the mistake doesn't happen again. Instead of doing a root
Yeah.
cause, you just put another process. And
Yeah.
of course, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure this happens everywhere in the world, but I was always making fun of
No,
them.
that's a good example because we know that to extract the potential of digital and to increase productivity, sometimes we have to replace processes with the new process. That's very hard to do, much harder than we think. Let me give you an example. I saw it the other day. Everybody knows about what Amazon Go is. That all censored Amazon store that you get in and you get out with the product and it's basically going to debit in your card and there's no checkout process and so forth. We all seen the videos of that, but the concept behind it, it's what's very interesting, because if you talk to a traditional retailer, they do a survey to their customers, and the customers, I think it's 30-40% of the time, they say they hate the checkout process. They hate to be in line. They hate to be putting the products on the belt. They hate to put it on the boxes and so forth. Okay. So what do? They do a wider belt. They do a more comfortable place to wait. They put some products for people to buy while they are waiting. How did Amazon look at that? They said people don't like it. 40% of the customers don't like the waiting in the checkout process. Let's eliminate the checkout
Yeah.
process. And that's a totally different mindset.
Yes.
So the traditionals, until an outsider came along and proposed something that is radical, it's quite obvious if you look at it, but it's not obvious when you are in the middle of the process. So a lot of times, my point here is you're too much involved on the process. You
Yes.
cannot have the
Yeah.
perspective to actually be innovative.
Let
So
me pick up.
somebody from the outside's got to be the disruptor.
Let me pick up on that one. So recently, me and my team worked with a big company here in Portugal, and it was very interesting because that exactly what you said happened. Meaning they had a huge project. So basically, before you could even start doing some software development, it would easily take 4 to 6 months, even before you could start, right? So one of the things that we were helping them is, how the heck are we going to improve this? And it's very interesting that every single person within the organization was trying to improve the process inside of the process, right? So let's do small increments here, let's do small increments there. And me and my team said, no, let's start from scratch. Yeah, but I don't care with the rules, I don't care with your legacy, let's start from scratch. And then we see what is really mandatory from the legal point of view, whatever. And basically it was incredible because by doing this, completely jumping away from the internal process and the internal, let's say, mindset, being an outsider guy, we were able to build a completely new process from scratch that basically they reduced the 3 months to almost a couple of weeks, right? And then, of course, they needed this kind of piece, we need this kind of piece. And then we added exactly what they needed from the requirement, from the legal point of view, from the central office requirement point of view. We added everything, but we completely destroyed. And we know that there was the third or the fourth time they went through this process. And they were saying, oh, but we already did that. There is nothing where we can improve. Why? Because they were doing exactly what you're saying. They were inside of the process. They were not able to think outside of the box. They were completely on the tunnel. And they were not able to eliminate or really step back and think in a completely different way. And it's
Yeah, and
really true.
that's normal. That's human. We all do it.
Yes.
We have so many good excuses not to do it or to think on compliance and to think on obstacles. So I think you need to have really you need to have courage, and you have to be not afraid to create enemies, not afraid to fail, to actually take advantage of that potential and to close that gap. I think that's totally key to actually do digital transformation. Yes.
Yeah, but the problem is, I talked a lot, and I even discussed this couple of episodes ago, that is easier said than done, because if you take a look, you're many years in an enterprise, so you know what I'm talking about. But for example, our companies, the enterprise, are designed in the way that they will reward people that do not take risk. So if you spend a couple of years doing your job, and you just do your job, and you make sure that you are not really crazy or really innovative, and you don't screw up anything, you know that in 3-4 years you get a promotion. But if you are really crazy innovative, you start to raise problems. Most probably when the promotion time comes, you will not be the guy that gets the
Yeah,
promotion.
but that's what's fun about it. It's not to comply. I think career, that's the fun of it. It's to basically challenge the system, not to try to be in the middle of the crowd every time. I think a corporation is tremendously powerful. I mean, when you can do so many things from a big company, from inside the big company. So I don't believe that transformation will come all from
Outside.
startups and new
Yeah.
companies. I think the challenge is exactly to take advantage of the power, customer base, financial support,
Yes.
structures, people that the big company has, and it's so much easier. I've been there to create transformation there. You just have to get the right cocktail of people to be bold, to be challenging the system, and not just to be complying. I think again, this may be a cliche, but it's all about people. I think technology, it's all about the groups of people that you are able to put together at a certain moment of time, and those people, they can do a lot of disruption if you get the right cocktail of and diversity of profiles, and basically um, the spark and the ambition to do something different and to go after results.
Yes. No, I agree with you. The big corporations have a lot what the startups don't have, especially, as you said, what I will say is market share, customer base, money. Some of them, or most of them, they have the capability to go for months with really good, comfortable financial situations. Startups don't have that luxurious. But I fully agree. It's all about the people. But then we come back again to the Maslow pyramid, right?
Yeah, but again, to somebody that is listening, younger, starting their career, that's what makes a career interesting, is to
Yes.
be able to challenge the status quo inside an organization. I think it's always worth it to do it.
And then you have the serious risk to end up like us as an entrepreneurs.
Well, eventually, but again, it's always some good aspects of it.
Definitely. I love the style of life. Miguel, I wanted to know, change a little bit the topic, not so much changing, but focus in a very interesting area that I have a special interest. So you have been focusing the last couple of years of your life career, focusing a lot on the education side. So I have my own opinion about the education. I feel I have a brother that is a professor in university. I'm very close to the university education system in Portugal, and I really believe that they kind of are stuck in time. So I really believe that they are still using the same methods that they were using 100 years ago, and now Zoom and all these nice tools with the pandemic uh, show there is a huge space. But I would not like to focus just on the tools, because the tools was just a channel used, because at the end the process is the way the evaluation, the program is still exactly the same. They just change the channel of the distribution, the lessons distribution. But I really would love to talk more. Where do you see education going? So you are doing a lot of online learning, helping companies to establish learning paths for their career, for their companies, for their career path inside of the organization. So I really would love to hear your opinion on that topic. And where do you see it's the future of education in this new era that is already here?
No, it's a very interesting topic, and you know what? I have an opinion also, Luis. And to me, the biggest problem of education nowadays is that you got 7 billion people, and they all have an opinion, and it's all a different opinion. Everybody's got an opinion about education, and that's so difficult to get an agreement on something. And that's, to me, one of the biggest problems. It's because, but again, it's interesting because it's a theme that affects everybody, from your children to you as a professional, you as a manager, you as a student, and so forth. So it's a really important subject, but it's a really hard to manage subject. First of all, the method. You mentioned it. You said 100 years. No, I think it's 1,000 years. You probably, in general, the teaching method today, it's not, obviously there are many exceptions, but in general, uh, you teach like people were learning about 1,000 years ago. That did not change. You got somebody that speaks very well, very good communicator, and it's very knowledgeable on a certain matter, and he speaks for hours, and people listen. That's the still the traditional method. I'm being a bit hard on my opinion, but in general, that's the thing. I think the biggest change factor, again, is very well related with the exponential speed that we talked about. The problem was there before the exponential speed of technology, but I think the economy accelerated so much that something that was obvious now became very evident, which is throughout a person's career. Let's take a person that starts working at 25 and he retires at 65. So he's got 40 years of a career, and he's probably was on education, let's put it on higher education, for 5 years. So he was 5 years on higher education, 40 years working. And people still think that after those 5 years, when he's 25, he's done for the next 40 years.
Well, I never saw that perspective, but
it's
you're
ridiculous.
completely right.
I will send you a chart that I saw, which is basically breaks down the average life of a person on weeks. It's actually quite depressing when you count the number of weeks that an average life have, and in different colors, it basically prints out the time that you dedicate to learn and the time that you dedicate to work. And it's a little bit like you exercise, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit like you exercise until 22. You do a lot of hard exercise, gymnastics, and so forth, and you're done for life. You never have to exercise again until the end of your life. We all know that it's totally wrong. And especially this has been exposed with the speed of change. So what you learn on university is very interesting, very good, but continuous learning, it's a cliche word. Lifelong learning is another cliche, totally misused and misunderstood. People don't understand that unless a professional has the capability to take learning as a parallel stream to work and its career, is made up. I mean, it cannot survive on the competitive world, especially with the pace of change that we are living right now. So that stopped to be an optional and it started to be a mandatory. Okay, but still the method, it's not there. So how can I learn while I am working? Obviously, the tools like e-learning and the MOOCs, Coursera, and so forth, they've made tremendous progress in the last 20 years, 10 years more or less, but still, in general, quite inefficient. Obviously, the pandemic has created levels of acceptance that were not there, but still, this parallel stream of learning as being part of your career is not yet embedded on the society, and I think that's the biggest problem we have to address. People have to understand that they have to learn more throughout their careers, and again, it's people, but again, it's companies, because most of the people are inside companies and work, and the company has a vested interest that the people know more. Obviously, companies sponsor education programs on technologies and things like that, but they have to do more than that. So I think there has to be some sort of a consensus between government, between the companies, and between the people, that there should be a mandatory number of hours and process to learn in parallel throughout its career. So it's something that it's mandatory. It's not an optional thing for the, let's say, the worker to continuous to be a productive citizen to its company. It's mandatory. It's like you do the mandatory health check in order for you to keep healthy, it should be the same thing. Now, what is the method? I don't know. It's difficult to get um, consensus there. And again, because most people don't face this frontally, that learning, especially when you are an adult, it's hard. It's not fun. Teach a 35-year-old person that never coded to teach how to code. You will get crazy after 1 hour. It's hard. And people are not used to do hard things. People avoid doing hard things. They prefer to watch Netflix.
Yes.
It's much more fun. So you have to make up your mind that learning is important, but it's hard to do. So we have to get incentives for people to learn and to create easier methods for people to learn, allow them time, subsidize them, give them money to learn whatever. I don't know. But in my opinion, that's a big theme for the society. Very poorly handled. And again, because everybody's got an opinion, I just share with you my opinion. It's probably the wrong opinion, but again, it's something that we all discuss, and I don't see a consensus, or we ending up in something that is a policy that makes sense, that it's applicable.
No, I think, and it will not be easy to someone to come up with a policy, because at the end of the day, inside of your own organization, you are the one telling what you want, you not as a leader, right? So it will be very hard, but you could have some more support from government or whatever, but I think that's hard. But I share the same opinion. So at this moment, we are really thinking inside of Evolution for All. We are discussing that we only work 4 days a week with our customers, and the fifth day is basically for us to come together. We are trying to set up communities of practice with books, so that people read books, and then they do workshops between us, presenting the topics, and then discuss how can we actually improve our service and what we have to offer to our customers. And at the same time, some online
There you
training.
go, Luigi. If I can build on that, better productivity from technology can release working hours. You don't have to fire people. Maybe you need them to invest better on learning new things that they will apply in the future. And you keep jobs by doing that. You get the economical gain of the productivity. You can keep the jobs, probably make more money, and make people's lives and to contribute to the society. Obviously, I'm simplifying it very much, but that's the sort of policy that maybe a government should be imposing to companies, and to actually comply with that. We're looking at the way that we were operating 100 years ago, and I think that model is totally broken. So it's a big thing, difficult to address.
In our, and I don't like to speak so much about evolution here, because it's not, I don't like to pitch here, but it's I think what I wanted to share now, it's a good idea for our listeners. But what we are trying to do is actually to build on top of what you said, that people don't lose the jobs, and actually it's the opposite. So what we are trying to do is actually asking people to learn, to come up with new skill sets. And if they want, we are going to try this maybe next year. If they want, they can even open a different brand of the company with the skill set they are learning. And actually they could become even entrepreneurs within the organization, to go and try to apply the new skill set that they are learning. So what I wanted to do is actually create a really crazy culture of learning and entrepreneurship, that people are always eager to learn new things, so that they can actually generate their own careers, their own not enterprises, because we are a small startup, but their own business unit, whatever you want to call it. And I think with this, it's you can really get tap into intrinsic motivation. You can really tell people, please learn, because you have your reward down the road, and you don't take the risk of losing your job. On the contrary, you can actually increase.
Yeah, but you know what, Luis? For a big corporation, it would be so easy to implement this.
Yes.
And the problem is that because they stuck on so much on conventional thinking,
yes,
and they are afraid to shake a little bit the boat, they don't do it. They're afraid to do it, and that's a mistake, because the potential to do this sort of programs inside the corporation are tremendous. There are a couple of examples of it and exceptions. For example, AT&T, which is, I know AT&T very well because it's a telecom company, telecom giant. That it's got over 250. Now they have sold parts of the business, but a couple of years ago they had over 250,000 employees. And again, because technology changed, we came on telecoms from analog to digital, from digital to internet to IP and so forth. So the skills have changed, and they have beautiful and very competent and great employees that are maybe on their 50s. They still have 15 years to go. And they lost a little bit their ground because the technology changed. And they have done a very interesting program on, let's say, reskilling, improving the capabilities of their current people. But they do it massively as a mandatory, but with rewards. So they did not do it. It's mandatory. You have to do it. Otherwise, it will be, penalty. You have a penalty, but with something that the employee could actually see the value of it and to gain gratification from it. So there are exceptions out there, but to me, what strikes me is that because I was in big companies, so I know the potential that they have. They could do so much more on this, but they just have to get involved, and they have to have the courage to actually see there is value for the company also by change.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. No, I again, when you are big and you have the money, you have a big support, and you have.
There you go.
Most of the times the problem is the money. If you have the money,
and they waste the money anyway on stupid education training that it's mostly worth it.
Yeah. Miguel, I want to ask you the last two questions. So the first one is, what was the biggest learning that you had in your career? And the second one is, what is your advice? And you already shared some in this show, but what is your advice for young leaders that are jumping into leadership careers, or they want to jump into leadership careers?
Well, this is really an old man's advice, right?
Yes, that's why I like.
End of the line.
That's why I like.
No, it's what can I tell you? As the biggest let's say learning again can sound paradoxically, because I've told you and you told, technology is my life, but the interesting piece is the people. I think we tend to be skeptical about people that think differently than you. And I think in general, I would say the biggest learning is that but by far, most people are well intentioned. Most people want to do good. Most people want to be productive. Most people want to learn. And we cannot, there's the risk of generalization that nobody wants to work, everybody wants to sneak. No, that's not true. People will surprise you positively. And sometimes the less likely groups of people, and sometimes less skilled group of people, are the biggest surprises. So my experience was, because I worked the consultancy, very cohesion group of people, good universities, young people, work a lot of hours. I went to telecoms and I thought that, this is like a civil servants, it was a total surprise. Even big corporations with older people and different backgrounds, people are the same. People want to do good. People get excited if you find what are the right buttons to press and to get them evolved. So people, it's the biggest learning that I can get. I can tell you that career, I avoid to talk this to young people because sometimes, in family and so forth, or people that I've worked, they ask you for some, career is probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 times harder than they think it is in
Yes.
the beginning. And it's good that they're not aware of that, but this is, it's going to be tougher than you think, maybe 5 times at least, but still very exciting, and it's still very rewarding, in my opinion, So I think you need always to keep that learning spirit, the trusting spirit on people. You get people that will disappoint you, but you have to keep trust because most people will do good for you, not bad, And you have to think big. In my opinion, you have to think big, especially if you want to lead people. People don't follow people that think small, People follow dreamers, people follow people that can get them to higher places, people that they can learn with, And I think that's if you have the ambition to be a leader, I think that's very important. You have to think big, be positive, dream, and people will follow. You have to be fair with people again, and I think that's an important. As I think it's very important that you get along well with your boss. I mean, if you don't get along with your boss, change jobs. You'll win,
Yes.
If you report to somebody that you don't like, change, don't expect that he will change. He will not change. He's on a stronger position than you. He's on the higher ground. So if you don't get along with your boss, move, and again, get around people that are diverse. You are diverse. It's really interesting, my relationship with you. You're so different than everybody else that I know. You're the sort of people that I look for diversity.
Wow.
I've
Thank you
been
so
learning
much.
with you a lot. It's really interesting. Congratulations for that.
Thank you so much.
Um, and you have to be close to people that are better than you, not worse than you, because otherwise you'll tend to be like them, not like the people that are better than you, more intelligent than you. I think that's an intelligent move, is to get close to intelligent people.
There's this saying, right, that you are the average of the 5 people that you talk the most, right?
There you go.
So if you think about, try to put yourself around people, try to be the dumbest person in the room, so that
It's
your
it's a
average.
bit of a cliche, but it's really true. And again, I think your success on these terms, your success in an organization, as surprising as it may be, is the number of enemies that you have created. If you don't create, if everybody loves you, you did something wrong. You're
Yes.
doing something wrong. It's because you're not creating disruption. You have to create enemies, not by the objective of creating enemies. It's because by having people that do not agree with you is the first symptom that you are really being bold and disrupting. And I think it's my advice is to be that.
So
Be
that's
that
good.
person.
So every time I enter in the customer, a couple of weeks later, the C-suite is always saying that there is someone already asking them to kick us out. So it means that we are doing something.
That's the ultimate compliment, in my opinion.
So every time I get contacted, they say, well, we can work with you if you are prepared to get some disruption, serious disruption. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Miguel, thank you so much. It was really, really nice to
Thank you,
have
Luis.
you
It was
here.
fun.
I will include the link for your LinkedIn in the show notes. So if people want to ask you, if people want to reach out to you, so that they can have the contact. It was a pleasure. Always great.
My pleasure.
Nowadays we cannot have so many times our lunches, but at least we found a way to talk a lot. Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I really wish you all the best.
Thank you, Luis.
See you.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Adapt podcast. Head on over to www.adaptmethodology.com/scorecard to benchmark your ability as a leader to adapt your entire organization to the digital era. You will be able to identify plenty of opportunities for leveraged growth.